What is up, guys? We are back. It's deer camp with the Lindsey. We had a 1 week hiatus. We were knee deep in Iowa trying to get some deer killed, get October squared away with the lives and everything. But we're back. October the 9th here. We are in the middle of a really good cool front right now. And I'm in the South. I'm in Georgia. We have a north wind blowing. It's going to be really good the next 2 days. It was really good once I left Iowa. I came back from Iowa on Monday. Monday afternoon was good. Dave's seen two shooters. He's seen another shooter last night, or Wednesday night, and then Tuesday he didn't see much. He's seen a couple 3-year-olds, but it's been really good since. He's not like locked in 100% on a buck yet. Optimus Prime, I think, is his number one target. That's a deer that is probably a 190s type deer, high 80s, 190s that my nephew named. And we passed him last year. So he's one of those deer that Dave's kind of starting to lock in on, but he's not exclusively hunting him yet. He's kind of still in his little window shopping phase. And me, I'm window shopping as well.
You
So
guys really like window shopping in Iowa.
we do, man. We do. And I really don't have any plans personally to hunt Iowa until some of the prime November dates. We'll get into that in just a second. But I'm going to Illinois next week. I was super excited looking at the forecast. Like Tuesday, we had a cold front coming in, a legit cold front, more so than a cool front, and it was going to be good. And then like the weekend was going to be really nice, and that was going to work out. I was going to take Cash up there with me. He was going to do some bow hunting, and then they just keep putting it back. Now, middle of the week, that little cool front that's coming in is not going to happen. The cold front just keeps sliding back days. So, just weatherman's killing me, man. I would love to. I want to time one of these cold front because I felt like last year in October I did not hunt a cold front. Every time I hunted was completely wrong. And I said, look, I'm doing it different this year if I can help it. Like I say, I got to move. I'm moving into my new house here in a couple weeks. So that affects a lot of things, but I might can slide around. I'm going to really try to hunt Illinois on that cold front because mid October without some cool weather is, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but you better have plans to watch some baseball or something because you ain't going to be on many tracking jobs.
Yeah, well, look, you did hit an epic cold front in December, though.
We did. We hit a really good one in Illinois in December. Yeah. When we got back, we didn't hunt that first gun. Second gun was magical.
I was cold enough to make you think about not hunting because it's too cold.
Yeah. That was like the one time of the year I kept the window shut in the redneck blind. It was like a thermostat. That one window on our corner. Every time we'd open that thing, it would happen. But
Look, we're unfortunately going out of a really good cold front right now. Be a week between this one and the next one. It looks like you said, I think it's still going to be good.
yeah, and I don't think next middle of the week was ever going to be a cold front. I meant the next weekend. But when I looked at it Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday in Illinois was looking pretty good for a cool front, just a little bit cooler. And now that hasn't happened. And I'm usually I take my family up there for a full, 5 to 7 days of hunting Illinois, and it's typically that mid to late October. Late October is already spoken for this year, so I'm having to go a little earlier than I would, really, to be honest, like, but it is what it is. So we're coming out of a good one. Opening weekend, which we went live for 3 days, was, I don't want to say terrible, but mature buck sightings did not happen. That last night, Sunday, we should have went to Jurassic Park where we kind of had talked about it. And there was a couple of really nice deer in there. And that clover field's full of shade, full of thick non-typical clover, and it's been good just about every night and lined with scrapes. And so, yes, some of our deer are in the acorns, but overall, most of our mature deer are still coming to clover or some of the better green plots that we have.
So, with that being said, I think, as guys go through the course of the next week, one thing you can be looking for is these deer to rip open these scrapes, and bucks you may have not seen yet this year or have been off the map for a little bit, showing back up. It's not super hot, but it's that time of year where these deer start moving in, they start tearing open these scrapes, especially this year. Everything seems like it's a little bit earlier in that
It does.
regard.
It feels. I feel that same way. I'm glad you said that because last week Iowa was loaded with scrapes. Usually we go to Illinois mid-October, and those deer over there, I honestly do not know. Their hoofs must just like perpetually grow because they just keep them pawed down. It's just about every limb that hangs down around those fields are scraped up, and it kind of Iowa wasn't like that. It never is, but it had more scrapes for the first week of October than I can ever remember seeing. And it's not like we were in the middle of the cool front, and so which we always, that kind of 1st of October, we move all of our cameras to scrapes. But because it was so warm and we weren't hunting but a couple hours in the evening and really weren't hunting mornings, we had more time in the day to just like put every single camera on a scrape, and that's our plan. There's still a couple more we have to move. Illinois, all my cameras are on scrapes anyhow. And I don't know if I told you this. I think you said you had some movement in Ohio, but Tuesday night, right, that last hour of dark up until the wee hours of the morning, I had more big bucks within those probably 5 or 6 hours hitting scrapes than I have had on camera in Illinois maybe all year since I put them out in July. And that's not a reach. I had new bucks. I had bucks that I may have had occasional glimpse of them or something like that, but bucks coming into mock scrapes or just walking past the camera, smelling the Evercalm, it was crazy. Tuesday night, it was like a switch got flipped. That switch flipped in Iowa Monday night, but Tuesday night was incredible on cameras.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for right now, boys and girls, is get those cameras on scrapes because it's fixing to blow up the next week or two.
Everybody complains, well, my deer are on acorns. I had a guy last night at church that said, hey, my deer are on acorns. I said, yeah, it's a great acorn crop. And he says, well, I said, well, you need to get in the woods. And he said, well, I don't know where to go. They're everywhere. I said, look, I normally would not encourage an October walk. I think we talked about this a little bit on our last podcast 2 weeks ago, but slide in there, slide into some of your best producing acorn flats. I like a ridge, I like a flat, I like a saddle in the timber, and hang where those scrapes are because there will be scrapes. The scrapes will tell you two things: there's bucks in there using it, and 100% there's deer in there using it because that's why I put a scrape there. So yes, there's scrapes in the same spots in the timber year after year, but when you have a huge mass crop like this year, I think you have to adjust a little bit. And I'm always going to tell people don't go in the woods. Deer pressure is the 100% in my mind. Why people may run big deer off their property or don't kill their target buck they're after. But right now, I think you might can get away with it a little bit.
Well, and let's be honest, we're about to talk about vacation days for Rutcation in November. Would you rather go and slide in there and find it now and have it set up for your Rutcation, or would you rather wait and do it when a day you could be hunting in early November? Because with as many
Absolutely.
acorns as we've got, it ain't changing. That food source is still going to be there when you're hunting the first couple weeks in November.
I could be wrong, but it looks like we're going to have acorns well into November. I mean, our deer still haven't ate up the sawtooths, and we hunted over some Tuesday night with cash, and there was still some in the trees. Usually those are done about October 1st, but we had so many. They're still falling. The deer are still coming to them. We're hunting right about 100 yards from some tonight on a spot we're going to. But it it's a good year for acorns. I said in that last podcast, I love that. I love those deer being fat going into the winter. They got that extra layer of fat on there, and they are going to be able next spring to put back quicker into those horns than they have in years past, just because of the protein and the fat content in those acorns.
Oh yeah. Well, and I've talked to guys that have corn piles out in bait states, and the deer are skipping over the corn to go to the acorns. So
Yeah, non-existent. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
here's your
you
sign.
you better have something they love. You better have some big time 45 with some cherry in there or something if you're going to compete with acorns right now. But let's jump into a question that I see a lot. And I know we were going to talk about this. This is kind of what this podcast is about today. But okay, I got a week to take off in November. When am I going to? I hear that so much. When would you suggest I hunt? Well, a lot of people are factoring that off the moon. A lot of people are factoring out off the weather. And let me preface this by saying this: that I am of, I hunted with Drury Outdoors for 7 or 8 years, and I agree 100% with Mark Drury on this, and that weather trumps everything. I am going to rather hunt a cold snap in the last week of October than I would if you gave me a little warmer spot in, the first 2 weeks of November. But that being said, if you're one of those people that are very fortunate, you may make your own schedule. You can work for your home. You're your own boss, or your boss lets you be a little flexible within a window. Yes, it's easy to pick these historical dates now on when you want to hunt in November. But if you can watch that forecast and you can slide out within once it starts really getting down and you get that cold snap in November, that is always gonna be when I tell people to go hunt. So I talk a little bit about out of both sides of my mouth here that I say, hey, watch the weather. But if you can't do that, we're about to go over some dates that historically are our favorite dates, and some of our friends and guys that we consider some of the best big buck hunters in the entire country. And so let's get into that a little bit. Clayton, do you want to go first? If I asked you this question right now, you got 5 days to hunt. 5 days in November, and you're a Kentucky guy.
Yeah, so
You're predominantly hunting northern Kentucky.
yeah, so the dates I'm giving you are based off what I see there, and it's going to be November 16th to the 20th. Used to
You like it
be,
later.
yeah, it used to be like November 6th to the 10th, but in recent years, the 16th to the 20th, I really like because I think they've gone through that peak estrus window. They've had a taste of it. They can't get enough, and they are really, really moving. And they're also, because they burn so much fat and calories at that point, they'll still stop to grab a bite to eat in that window. And generally, the weather's a little bit cooler, so that helps. You might not see a lot of movement, but you're going to see the one, and you're going to see some deer show up you haven't seen before because they're going to start sliding around. They're going to be desperately seeking
They're
again.
expanding their rut ranges there because they're looking for that one last doe. Those guys are only getting to rut and breed once a year. And once they tasted the fruit of the vine, they don't want to quit it. They don't want to give it up. So that's typically you always talk to the old timers, after that 15th has historically always been the peak estrus cycle day. There's more does that come in heat on the 15th than any other time. So that is kind of like your lockdown phase. I traditionally like hunting the lockdown phase because I feel like I'm hunting the does more then. That buck's not out running around. I have no idea where he's coming. That buck on that day, mid-November, is, and I'm not saying he's with the same doe every year. There's really no way to tell in wild herds, but I guarantee you he's close. And so that's another thing when we say look at the calendar on historic rut dates. Look where that deer was the year before. Of course, I love that in late October. Of course, I love that in the rut. Those deer do the same thing almost down to the calendar day every year. One, it's familiarity. It's the way they were raised. It's what they've always been doing. And another thing is there's a doe that they love or they know she comes in first, and he's going to be around that same area. So pay attention to your camera dates, especially if you got a big buck that you know the certain deer you're after or you're chasing one buck. Look and see where he's been in daylight the last 2 or 3 years. If you keep trail cam, I hope everybody keeps trail cam pics and keeps them cataloged because that will come into play so much in these next couple of weeks.
Well, I've noticed that on my place. Like there is a buck. Like you find a mature buck, he'll find a specific family group of does, and you can just about bet in that same 5 day window he'll be there again the next year. For example, we had a deer last year was 3.5. He's 4.5 this year. He's mature, for me at least, and he November like 8th to the 15th, there was a 5 day window in there. He was there almost every day in daylight in this one spot. So if I want to go kill that deer, I know exactly where I'm gonna go to kill him. All I
Yeah,
need is an east wind, and it's game on, buddy.
he'll be there. Well, I hope you get more east winds than we do in Iowa and Illinois because those are those are usually after January, or unless it rains or something, we might get one. We did have a northeast wind Monday night, or yeah, northeast wind Monday night.
Yeah. So now, if you want to talk, like if you're a believer in the moon overhead or the moon underfoot, before we go into the rest of these guys' dates, I can tell you that, let me pull it up here on my calendar. You got a moon overhead, like when I say overhead, I mean meridian passing, like directly overhead, highest point. That is going to be October 29th this year. And then you get to the next one, which will be, that's moon overhead in the evening. Next overhead moon is going to be in the morning on November 12th.
That coincides with the red moon. Who some people feel strongly about that. QDMA, or well, actually National Deer Association, just, and I kind of wonder if it's a troll post or not, because they say the same thing about cold fronts. But they say they have tons of scientific data to back up that the deer movement is so affected by the moon, just so minimal. And while I haven't noticed it a ton, I do like a rising moon. That is one thing that if the moon is like it was 10 days ago or whenever, when I was in Montana, and then right towards the end of September there. But when that moon is rising in the afternoon, those deer are up on their feet. And I know that gets to kind of the overhead moon and stuff like that. I I mean, you could talk about scientific data and anything all you want, but I know from what I see and when I'm out there, and I believe in that. Now, as far as full moons, I don't hunt. I'm not the middle of the day type guy that hunts on a full moon. I have seen the full moon 100% affect my elk, an elk hunt. When it's a full moon all night, they're they're almost non-existent in the day. There's a very short window in the morning, very short window in the afternoon. I don't see that with deer. I've heard people say on coos deer, 100 the full moon 100% affects them. I don't know. I've never hunted the gray ghost, but October 29th, if it's overhead, October 9th is going to be, if you just pulled that little moon sector into it, there's going to be deer moving October 29th. But if you get a cold snap, October 29th could be the best day of October all year if we get that cold snap. Just because I love that 27th through 31st and Halloween on scrapes if you get a cold snap. If you don't get a cold snap, it's rolling the dice.
Well, you want to talk about cold snaps, and you want to talk about full moon affecting animals. One thing I personally think is if you get a full moon that first 2 weeks in November there, and you don't have a cold snap coinciding with it, so if it's warmer weather, if it's mid to high 60s is a high, I think that full moon it doesn't affect the rutting activity, but it affects what you see as a hunter in daylight hours because it's
Right.
warmer. They've got a winter coat, so they're going to want to do it at night. They're more of their movement at night. And with that moon, it's that little extra light. I mean, sometimes that moon's bright enough you don't need a flashlight to walk through the woods as a
Right.
human, let alone a deer. So,
A poacher's moon in November. Yeah, you see that a lot. But and I know they've done all these studies, and I've heard the scientific evidence. But me trust the science. I'm not. That's not me. I'm sorry, but I don't trust our government. I don't trust it. And so when somebody says trust the science on deer movement, I'm like, okay, that sounds familiar. But 100%, I want to know if there's been a moon study or a deer study with the moon overhead or with a full moon that coincides with weather. Everything. How do we know that moon study that week, it wasn't raining all week? We had a ton of cloud cover. There's too many variables there to say that. Maybe those guys have millions of hours or something in that. I don't know, hundreds of hours, I should say, in that, and can kind of justify that. But I don't know. There's too many differences in what I see in the South. There's too many as far as Midwest based off weather. Deer don't react to cold fronts in the South like they do in the Midwest. And I guarantee you, we have 4 different subspecies of deer in the U.S. Just like I think a full moon affects elk more, I guarantee you each one of those subspecies are probably a little more affected than the others than based on full moons, moon overhead, moon underfoot, rising moons. I know the guys that believe in the red moons will fight you over it.
yeah.
One of them's Lee Lakowski, and without getting into too much down the road, but I think he said, what did he say? His dates were November 7th through 11th, and he told me no questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the red moon. That will be the best days of hunting in November. And
Huh?
he was all, and I didn't get into it with him on the weather and all, but he was like, none of that matters. 7th to 11th, that's going to be your best days.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're talking about these dates. My opinion is weather is weather. Yeah, it can boost things or suppress things, but dude, dates are hard to beat. You can still kill them when it's
They
hot.
are. They are. And that's why this is, not counting weather. That's why we're going to get into this calendar a little bit. But as I've gotten older, I love your 16 to 20th days. And I would have probably picked the 15th through 19th if you had a gun to my head on only 5 days I could hunt. But then when I started pulling off all these dates of when I'd shot bucks over the last 5 years, I'm like, okay, I'll pop up a little early. I'll go the 11th to the 15th just based off my success. And I think even though a lot of people are going to say that early November, but there's not near as many people hunting on your favorite days. One, they're burnt out. Two, they're tagged out. Three, it's too cold, and so they've been hunting so hard in October, November, it's done. So to me, you kind of got the woods to yourself by then. And if you're still mentally strong enough and physically strong enough to handle, and you got the right gear to handle some of that colder weather you get then, man, that's those big boys are moving. And you add in the food factor. If there's a specific deer that you're after, the best time to kill them is end of October in a scrape in his home area. The next best time, in my opinion, will be that last week of November, first week of December, when that deer is coming back to his home core. He's coming back to his home range. He's ready to eat. He's going to be in that same food plot, that same green plot, that same bean field that he's been in all summer. He's coming back there. So I'm going to spill the beans here. We kind of got into it a little bit. My dates are 11th through the 15th November. If all things created equal, if it's getting up to 55 degrees every day and 38 degrees at night for the entire month of November, I'm going the 11th through the 15th. And I'm going to rattle off some days here, right here, if you got a second. Okay. 2019, I shot Big Chocolate. He ducked my arrow. I hit him high. That was a deer that took years off my life. It gave me gray hair, but I shot him on November the 14th. I hunted that deer religiously for a month and a half, and I think that was the second time I seen him. He came out locked down with a doe, November the 14th. 2020, the immigrant, I killed him on the 16th, November the 16th. 2021, on the 11th, I killed that 180 something deer, 180-inch deer in the hardwoods. He was locked down with a doe on the 11th. I killed him at like 11:30 in the day. The 10th, I killed that big 10 that had the flyer. Awesome buck, November the 10th. He was out making a scrape. I rattled him in, grunted him in, and he came right there and I shot him in the hardwoods. 2023, 2023, 2023 is when I shot my deer late season. But 2024, let's go to last year, 11/14. That was the day where I shot Junior. I'd seen him the year before on the 14th. I shot him on the 14th last year. So when you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, last 5 out of the last 6 years, 10th to 16th. That's where I was on my deer. So that's how I settled up with mine on 11th, 15th. I used to say November 5th was like Christmas morning. That's when it all starts for me. That's when the rut gets good. The 1st through the 5th, unless we got a cool front, I don't like it. I don't even really haven't even been hunting much then because I don't want to get burnt out before the real good days get. But yes, I love the 7th, the 8th. I think Bill Winky Day, or what I call Bill Winky Day, is November the 7th. That is 100% his favorite day. But as I get older, two things. I love that end of October, but we're not talking about October, we're talking about November. But give me the 11th through 15th every November, and I'm happy.
Yeah, most of the bucks I've killed are actually like the 4th to the 10th of November, but that's also because I'm not getting to hunt the 16th to the 20th.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I can sit there and look at the trail camera pictures and tell you without a doubt on an area I'm at, if you're not after a specific deer, if you just want to kill a mature deer, dude, you can't. I mean, to me, you can't hardly beat the 16th to the 20th. They're all moving like crazy.
you can't. And when you get up there and you start checking trail cams and all that, and you're like, oh my gosh, look what I missed. But you're not going to see as many deer, especially as you get, around the 9th or 10th, right before the majority of those bucks lock down. What we've noticed, you're not going to see a lot of deer. I mean, your sits are going to be small. Afternoons are almost non existent on food plots because the does have learned that if I take my fanny out in that food plot, I'm going to get harassed by every single buck that comes in that plot. A lot of those deer coming in out of those plots, just checking for does, looking for does. So they're staying hid. They're in a ditch somewhere. They're backed up in a thicket, and I can't say that I blame them.
Well, and at the end of the day, like pretty much the first 10 days of November, what I've seen, like you said, they've been getting pestered by spikes. So as soon as they show their face out there in those food plots in daylight, they're going to get pestered by spikes. So, but with that being said, I was talking about this with Jay last night. Yeah, the does aren't there, but those big bucks still might cruise through those food plots because they're thinking in their head, well, there should be some does in here somewhere because that's where they're used to seeing them.
Yeah, November is seat time. Let's don't kid ourselves. I'm never going to be the one to say, "Oh man, it's too hot. Don't go hunting." It's November. Seat time is what kills. Hunt as many times as you can in November. Be 20 foot up in a tree. Be in your tree stand. That is going to up your odds because at that point it's a numbers game. He's going to daylight. He's going to walk. He's going to zombie walk. At some point, and you want to be there when he does it. I just feel like in the rut, a lot of people are running cell cams now. That's the rage. That is what the industry has gone to. But a cell cam in the rut will put you one step behind that buck all November. You gotta be one step ahead, not one step behind, in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, did we do the
Getting to a
full?
couple of these dates.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did we do the full list yet? Let's give these.
Yeah,
Let's just hammer out this list and give it to everyone in one fell
one
swoop.
big swoop. Okay, my dad is uh, 4th through the 8th. And I didn't ask Bill Winkie. I should have asked Bill, but I guarantee you his would have been, 4 days before or after that 7th, probably that 7th, knowing Bill. And he's kind of more, he grew up hunting that southeast Iowa, kind of where we used to hunt. In the rut, things get going over there a little earlier. They do. South Central, where we're at, it's a little later. But Dad, he's 4th through the 8th. That's when he is 100% going to be in a tree. And that 100% coincided with Ben Rising. My buddy Ben Rising, he hunts Iowa, Illinois, predominantly, or Kansas, but predominantly Ohio. He is 4th through the 8th. He also had mentioned he loves that last 2 days of November, or the 29th and 30th, almost the last 2 days. But I said, hey, I need 5 days. So that's where he was at. Going down the list here, Mark Jury, 6th through the 10th. When I asked Mark that, I said, give me your best 5 days in November. He said, last 5 days of October. I was like, no, November. So, and he's usually tagged out in October anyhow. But November 6th through the 10th, he said historically, that's his days. Lee Lakowski, November 7th through the 11th, 100%. He said, those are my days. Red Moon, that's when I'm going to be there. Don Higgins, November 5th through the 9th. Don hunts a ton in November. Don's been writing articles for North American Whitetail for years. I've always valued Don's opinion. So November 5th through the 9th. Cameron Coble, buddy of mine who we had on the live this past week, that guy scores more big deer than anybody. He knows the dates those bucks were entered in the record books. 7th through 11th. That was his days. I don't even know how much Cam gets to hunt. He's too busy scoring all these deer, but nonetheless, he had the exact same days as Lee Lakowski. We talked about mine. Doug Hampton. Also asked my buddy Doug Hampton. He moved to Iowa 4 or 5 years ago, and he says the 16th to the 20th. So going back to the first date, yours, you and
Yep.
Doug, it sounds like y'all need to be hunting together. But that's a list here, and I don't have that calendar in front of me. I'm just looking at what I had on the list. But man, I mean, that you kind of like you throw a dart at the 10th and then you just kind of pick off that. If you looked at most all these days, mine were a little later. Mine was the 11th. I would be past the 10th. But most people, man, let's see, the 10th, that's kind of the magic number that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, well, I think it'd probably be more like the
8th, it'd be the 8th,
eighth, 9th. I could tell you this, like before I had this transition the last few years to the 16th and 20th, I would have told you that if I look at trail camera pictures and mature bucks on their feet in daylight, the day on my place specifically would have been November the 9th.
November 9th.
Yeah.
6 of our 9 people that we're talking about, including me and you, November 8th was on that list. So scratch what I said about the 10th. Put a pin on the 8th and pick if you want to hunt in front of behind it. And like I say, if you got a very understanding boss or a very lenient supervisor and say, hey, I know I'm going to be gone on the 8th, but I don't know if it's going to be the first 3 or 4 days in front of it or the 4 or 5 days after that. And you can base that off of weather, that's your days. Book it. It may not be the days that 100% I would pick, but there's a lot of guys on this list that have been hunting a lot longer than me and are a lot more deer savvy and smarter than myself. So
my boss is mean, which would be myself. He already picked that
I thought you were
schedule
going to say your wife.
due to life stuff, and yeah, the 8th through the 15th, I will be in Florida.
But you're going to hunt before and after that.
Yeah, I'll get the 1st to the 7th, and then the 16th to the 20th.
I don't. I'm not hating that. I'm not
No.
hating it. I would probably rather do that than um, come in there too early. But
Yeah. Is what it is. I get to hunt this.
you're missing my favorite day. So if you don't kill one this year, I mean, I can promise I'm going to tell you I told you so.
Yeah, that's fine. I get to hunt the
Yeah.
16th to the 20th for once, so I'm happy.
Yeah. That's why I don't go too hard in October. I know I could, if I went as hard in November, if I went as hard in October as I do in November, I'd kill a deer a lot quicker because every time and it gets that 1st of November and you're waiting on things to kick off and you're, moving trail cams around, looking at trail cam pics, trying to get up to date on everything. You're like, gosh, man, it was good right there in that 27th, 28th when we got that cold front, but I don't, you just can't do it all. I got businesses I run. I got 4 kids. Me and you are both in the same boat. We're extremely busy and getting
Yep.
busier by the year. And I'm thankful for that. I can't complain. But I have to kind of just circle these days on my calendar, like, that 11th through the 15th. I mean, I still take phone calls, emails, we can text and all that, but my fanny's going to be in a tree in Iowa.
Yeah.
Unless I'm tagged out. And if that's the case, then I'm going to be over in Illinois or Kansas somewhere.
Well, to your point on Illinois, now that you were talking about dates and scrapes earlier in the podcast, I've killed one deer out of the state of Kentucky, and it was in Illinois. I hunted there 2 years. The first year I killed one there, it was October 27th.
I
Came
love
in
Illinois.
and ripped a scrape 20 yards in front of me.
I love Illinois that last week of October. I do. Now, if this list was compiled if you had to just paint me, okay, paint me in a corner, you're only going to get to hunt Pike County, Illinois. I'm probably it's not going to be the 11th through the 15th for me, but it's a little variable. And none of these people, or a few of these people hunt Kansas, but none of them predominantly hunt Kansas. But if I asked all my buddies that hunt in Western Kansas, they're going to say probably that 3rd week of November. That list is going to be a lot different than others.
Yep.
But like I said earlier, the older I get, I like that last week of October, and I like that more of that middle of November than I do those first 2 weeks. But
But if
there
we're
it
going
is.
with our average,
Book your
if you
trip.
pick the 8th and you put that in the middle of your 5-day window, you're in the
Yeah.
chips based on what all
What
these
day is
guys
that? I don't
take.
even have my calendar in front of me. What day is the 8th? Just
It is.
for craps and giggles here.
I should have known. It is Saturday, November 8th,
Oh my
opening
God.
day of Kentucky's rifle season.
Rifle season. Boom. How many 3-year-olds are going to die in Kentucky's rifle season?
How many 2-year-olds are
November
going to die in Kentucky's
And then
rifle season?
Nebraska and Missouri, they got the same thing. If they could just take that rifle season and being a $1 state, like Kentucky is, I don't think it hurts Kentucky as much as it hunts, Nebraska and Missouri. I think Nebraska's still a $2 state, but to have that rifle season right there in the middle of the rut when people can shoot, 300-400 yards and, around that 8th, I mean, a 3-year-old buck then is really not sleeping. He's pretty much getting up out of his bed sometime around the 5th of November or whatever, and he's going to walk around by every hunter in the state till somebody finally shoots him, unless you can just get that one that's a little bit scared of his own shadow or somewhat cautious. But of course it's on the 8th. At least it's a Saturday. But I mean, are we comfortable enough right now to say there's probably going to be more bucks shot on November 8th than any other deer? Are we comfortable enough now to say that when this season's over, you look back, November 8th, there's going to be more bucks shot on November 8th than any other any other day of the season?
Oh, that's like a tough thing to bet on, bro.
Oh no! If there was betting odds, that's going to be your day. Because
Betting odds, yeah, that's the favorite, 100%.
That's a Saturday. And
yeah, okay, yeah, it's a Saturday.
Then.
Yes, yeah, I'm giving it to you because it's a Saturday, 100%.
There will be more deer killed on November 8th than any other deer in the 25-26 deer season.
I mean, that works out perfect for guys trying to manipulate a schedule. You got the 8th and the 9th, a Saturday and Sunday. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, just pick, 8th and the 9th. Pick when you're going to hunt. You're going to hunt before and after it. The people that are the moon freaks, you're lined up with that. The people, just if you can be a little flexible then and watch that weather, you know, maybe it happens for your sake, and for your sanity. I guess you're kind of pulling for that. Maybe it'll be warm on the 8th. That way, some of your bucks will live.
No, here's how I figure that sanity part out. I always look at that and I cringe and it makes me cry inside. And then I just go to the next year because it's always the second Saturday in September that Kentucky's gun season opens. I just go to the next year and I see it's like November 14th. I'm like, oh, praise the Lord. We'll be back to normal next
Oh
year.
yeah, yeah. Give you another week. Absolutely. I don't blame you there.
So,
Uh, I've had many guys sit in trees with me, camera guys that are from Nebraska, and that opening weekend, and I don't. It's usually mid-November, sometime right there with the rifle season. They are some poor souls, and I can't blame them. That's back it up
what?
a week, guys. If we got any state agencies, DNR, Game and Fish, Parks and Wildlife, listen to us. If you're not a $1 state, if you're $2 state, back that rifle season up just a week.
Well,
Let these
here's
deer
what I am
live.
going to tell people. Okay, you only get a week to hunt. You can also coordinate that schedule and pick that week that you can stay out of there so that when all these other guys, whether they're bow hunters, gun hunters, or what have you, they're pressuring the deer on all the ground around you, let them do that. You stay out and wait a little bit longer, and then your place turns into more of a sanctuary, whether it be the does coming in and the bucks following or whatever it is. But I've seen that work with guys time and time again in Kentucky. They'll like stay out the first week of gun season, and then they'll wait till that 16th to the 20th time frame, and all the deer on them because they got pushed around by the gun hunters. But so and so's 40 to 100 acres over here hadn't been touched during that gun season, so that's where all them deer felt safe, right? And they just moved
Right,
in there temporarily. So you can do that too. You can plan your schedule like, hey, let everyone else push them around. I just got to hope my deer doesn't get killed in that time frame. But you always bet
right.
on the deer. Like you got to always bet on a mature buck to survive.
You always got to. You got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But there are so many ways, and I've always said I'm going to write a book one day on all the ways a mature buck to die
Because you
could
got
die.
so much time for that.
And it's yeah, right. And it's going when I retire, maybe. And that's going to be a long book because there are so many flipping ways that a bucks can die. It just makes me sick when you stop and think about it. And probably hunters are the least of their concerns. But yeah, getting back to your point, there's two people. There's the people that run their deer off their land and their neighbors benefit, or you're the recipient. You're the guy who all your neighbors are running the deer onto you. So try to stay out if you can. If you got to go in there and get something done, get it done now. Get it done quick. Get it done early. And good luck this fall. It's going to be a fun year. The weather so far is good. If you look at some of the old wives' tales on persimmon seeds and some of the earlier forecast in Canada that the ducks are kind of getting ahead of these cold fronts, I think we're in for a much cooler, colder fall than we were last year.
Well, and on that note, I will say if you guys are trying to play around the 8th and play the weather a little bit, it doesn't have to be a massive cold front. It could be a slight temperature change of like it's 5 or 10 degrees cooler than
Yeah,
it was yesterday. And you get in and around that November the 8th. I mean, I did it a couple years ago. That's all it takes sometimes to pull it off.
yeah, and that was kind of the whole point of doing this calendar. No matter what the weather is, you're going to be fine then. You're going to be fine. You may not have a 15 deer day. You may only see 5, but you might see the right one. He's probably going to be daylighting somewhere, that buck you're after.
Yep, that's right.
All right, bud, good talking to you, but I got to get off here and go to work, but I will see you the same time, same place next week. Deer camp with the Lindseys. This was your official hunt planning calendar. Good luck, boys and girls.
See y'all later.